Hello everyone, and welcome back once again to Cozy Reads. I hope you've all been keeping well. Thank you for joining me again for another story. In today's story, we will carry on with the tale of Regalion. As Max and Co finally make it to get proper medical attention, we learn a bit more about Max's past and the types of people that he became friends with. As Max and Co arrived at the doctor's residence, they were greeted by the meowing of a cat. "Oh, whose cat is this? You're a good kitty, ain't you?" Hector said as he knelt stroking the cat. He immediately took a liking to him and refused to leave his side as it purred, walking between his legs and hands. The cat seemed like a delicate creature. It was an interesting shade of grey, almost as if the purest black and white had been fused into its fur. It had a cream-coloured tuft under its chin resembling a beard. Max knew who the cat was, and immediately upon hearing its name, Sir Brothwell, the cat darted over to him and jumped to him, giving him very little time to catch it. "My gosh, you've always been a daredevil, just charging and jumping at everyone you see." Max laughed while holding Sir Brothwell, who gave out a sly meow, almost as if to agree with Max. He put the cat down. He went back to play with Hector while Bree commented, "That cat is so cute. I want to take him home. Can we take it, please? I mean, Sir Brothwell is a weird name, so we'll have to give you a new one. How about Fluffkins? See, I think he likes it," Bree said whilst playing with the cat as well. "As nice of a name as that is, I think Sir Brothwell is already resigned to his name," a man said while walking over. He had exited from the apartment building that they were standing in front of, and Max knew who that was too. Their mysterious stranger was the one they came to see, Lance Megaton. "Lance, it's been a while. How have you been?" Max said while reaching out to hug his old friend. "Too long," Lance said after exiting the embrace. "Huh. So I guess this is your cat then," Bree said whilst petting the cat. "Not mine, my dad's. He's been out on the road for a while, and so he asked me to take care of Sir Brothwell over there. But enough about that, let's head inside. I was in the middle of cooking dinner and Max did warn me that there will be a few of you, so I hope you like oxtail stew," Lance said while ushering them to the door. They all followed behind, and Lance then closed, locked and bolted the door shut. Bree looked a little bewildered before saying, "Wow, you really take security seriously here, don't you?" Lance just nodded his head, saying, "It's always better to be safe than sorry." The apartment complex was very simplistic in design, while also being strange and foreign, with beautifully painted pictures adorning the walls. Marble flooring and marble wall tiles coated certain parts of the entranceway, almost as if someone started to improve the place but never finished. It was clear that animals were living here. Feathers and fur were hanging off fans and dotted along the floor. Bree was in awe. She was taken aback by the upholstery and design. There were posters also hanging on the walls, and music could be heard blaring from one of the rooms. It seemed like there were two opposing factions trying to renovate the place to their specifications. Bree found it almost weird that these were merely apartment buildings, so one apartment could easily match a small house in terms of size. That's what baffled her the most. The apartments were massive but still ordinary. It made her even more interested but also more wary of their young doctor, as young doctor's salary would not be enough to afford such a luxury, and Max never mentioned a wealthy family. "Ah, you're interested in the decor? Yeah, I've always thought it was a little over the top, but the other residents like to keep up appearances. They're of the mindset that by portraying wealth, then that portrayal will become a reality," Lance said whilst looking over the furniture. Bree had heard the same rhetoric before from others. She understood this sentiment, but she also knew how important it was to seek out your wealth and do what you can to acquire it. "Alright, we're here. Welcome to my humble abode." Lance beckoned to the apartment and its huge oak door. The entrance itself seemed otherworldly, as they went from a moderately sized hallway to a huge apartment room complete with an upstairs. The smell of cooking wafted its way to their noses. Meat, spices and vegetables all blended to create such a homely smell. It made Bree realise that she had not had a proper meal in what seemed like forever, and looking over at Max and Hector, even though Hector tried to hide it, it was clear that they felt the same. "Ah, you all seem hungry. Well, the best way to get the healing process started is on a full belly of food." Lance motioned for everyone to follow him to the dining area. However, not before everyone had to take off their shoes and use the slippers that Lance had prepared. As Bree entered the dining area, she could not help but think about the interesting decor of Lance's apartment. It was clear that he was a man of science, or at the very least interested in science. This was made evident by the maps of constellations he had hanging on the wall, along with a huge poster depicting the periodic table, and portraits and pictures of famous scientific institutions and people. However, what she found most interesting was that it seemed that Lance was also a man of religion. He had portraits of famous religious figures with descriptions underneath, explaining who they were and what they did. He had religious robes draped over mantelpieces, and extracts from various religious texts framed on the walls. Bree thought to herself that Lance may just be a collector, or at the very least just have varying interests. All this awe and interest quickly subsided when she heard her belly grumble for the second time. I guess it's time to eat, she told herself, and joined the others at the table. As everyone indulged in the dinner, Bree couldn't help but admire just how tasty the food was. Either it was tasty because they had not eaten properly in so long, or because it was due to Lance's cooking. Either way, Bree was utterly captivated by the food, and she was not about to stop eating anytime soon. After dinner, everyone sat around the table talking and discussing. They mainly spoke about each other, each person getting to know a bit more about the people they were travelling with. While Hector had come out of his shell a bit more, it was clear that he was still wary of his new travelling companions. Hector explained his love of nature and his discontent with the powers that he possesses due to their destructive nature. It makes sense you are far more interested in preserving nature than destroying it. However, with the power that you possess, destruction is all it seems you can do. Even when you try to protect, you must destroy in the process, Lance surmised. Hector looked solemn. Even though he did not respond, it was clear that that's exactly what he was feeling. That's one way to look at it anyway, Lance added. Hector became wary again, unsure as to where Lance was going with this. Instead of worrying about the wanton destruction you can cause, try to think of the things you can protect. I don't just mean in the short term. Think about when you're forced to use your power. I'm sure you do not actively go out and cause destruction on purpose. I'm sure when you do unleash your power, you do it to either protect yourself or to protect something bigger than yourself. You cannot protect anything if there's nothing left of you to do the protecting. Why not focus on protecting nature as best you can by preserving and aiding it to grow? You may not always be able to protect every bit of nature. That's just the cycle of the universe. Things must die for others to live. And even nature destroys itself to allow something new to grow. However, the difference between what nature does compared to humans is that nature usually does what it can to protect and cultivate the many, be it plants, animals, bugs, etc. Whereas we actively destroy nature to better our standing. Why not focus on pushing back against those who would harm nature? If you cannot always stop them, then don't worry. Even with your power, you are still only one man. Do not place so much burden on yourself. Share the load and do what you can to assist nature in growing and cultivating itself. Or maybe you truly are guilty of the power you have, and your love of nature is merely a coping mechanism to give your life meaning so that you do not lay waste to everything in your path. Both valid thoughts. Choose who you want to be in life, Hector, and don't let the power you possess dictate your life. Make your own decisions. Stand tall and firm so that you can protect nature when the time arises, Lance concluded. Anyway, these are just the ramblings of a young doctor. Don't take them to heart. Live your life how you choose. I'm just always fascinated by people like yourself, Lance added. Bree looked over at Hector and could see that he was in deep thought. It seemed that these words had cut deep. However, she hoped that he would not take them negatively and instead learn from them. And you, Miss Bree, it would seem that your life has been thrown into complete disarray. I'm sure that you never in your wildest dreams would have thought that this is how you would be spending your days. I appreciate your reasons for carrying on with the quest. However, I must ask, what are your other motivations for seeing this quest through? Lance said, while staring intently at Bree. I don't know what you mean. I have no ulterior motives for carrying out this quest, merely that I want to find out more about my family, my grandmother, and our connection to the Godforsaken, Bree replied. She too was now feeling more and more wary of Lance's conversation choice. The reason why I bring this up is that any normal person would have run by now, but you stayed. I believe this is because you wanted to get away from the humdrum life of regular living and enter a world of escapism, one where death and prosperity are inextricably linked, waiting on opposite corners, waiting for you to choose. I do not wish to cause any emotional or mental harm. I'm just a man who loves to understand the world and its people. Bree realised that even if his intentions were pure, he still addressed difficult topics for her and Hector. She thought about what she wanted to reply with. It seemed that Lance, if not intentionally prodding, was still asking questions that would require more adequate thought before giving a response. However, Bree and Hector were saved by the bell as they heard a ring sound throughout the apartment. Lance looked over at the door, adding, it seems that our other guest is here. I called my dad over to help with the medical attention, but to also discuss what is going on with the quote-unquote underground world of ours. Lance then got up and walked over to his door to check and ensure that it was his dad who had arrived. While Lance was away from the table, Bree looked over at Max, who seemed to be a bit more quiet than usual. He seemed to be keeping to himself during the whole discussion. Bree noticed that Max was checking on his wounds. It was clear that he was in deep thought. She wondered what he was thinking about. It could be the previous encounter that they had. She thought that Max is far more experienced in those type of things, and he understands the emotional weight that comes with the intense fight that they had gotten into earlier. However, she was also concerned as he was separated from her, and so she did not see how his fight went down, only that he was still alive. It seemed that something must have gone down, as he seemed more solemn, almost as though he was lost in thought. Max was thinking about his fight with Zazel, a powerful opponent who was ready to die for his belief. Zazel's unshakable belief resonated with Max. He thought whether it was his place to kill Zazel and fulfill his wish, enemy or not. Max thought whether letting him live was the right idea. Zazel had begged to die, an honourable death, and letting him live might come to bite them later. But Max also couldn't dismiss how Zazel's situation was like Scarlett's when he first met her. Two people who were willing to rush into battle, even if it meant certain death. Two people who used whatever excuse they could to potentially hide how broken they were. Because of that, Max could not bring himself to kill Zazel. While he could not say that he knew exactly what Zazel's thoughts and feelings were, he told himself long ago that he would not bring himself to end another's life, even if they pleaded for it in battle. If that made him weak, then so be it. The questions that Lance was asking also resonated with Max, and they got him thinking. He and Lance used to have long conversations, debating on a lot, but mostly on the importance of the Ancients, the Unyielding, the Reapers. They used to discuss a lot about existence, and even though Daemon was a relative normality, they would still ponder on whether Daemon were a necessity, and what life would be like if they didn't exist. What would happen with Reapers, with people like Zazel? Would they join military units or the police? Would they become secret task forces used by the government? Would they even be allowed to carry on existing? Or would they become something far darker to satiate whatever bloodlust they may have? And if that's the case, then what about himself? As he thought on this, a man walked into the room accompanied by Lance. "Max, my boy, it is a pleasure to see you again, though I wish we were all meeting in more pleasant times," said the man. As he did, he walked over to Max and shook his hand. "It is a pleasure seeing you again too," Max said. The man then looked over at Bree and Hector. "Ah, and you two must be Max's companions. My name is Linus, a pleasure to meet you. I am Lance's father and the one who taught him all he knows about medicine." Linus chuckled and walked back over to Lance. "To be fair, he's not wrong there," Lance said whilst letting out a slight laugh. "Well, let's get this started then. I'm sure you've all enjoyed your moment of respite, but with the events that are taking place, I'm afraid that a moment is all we can fathom," Linus said while pulling out his doctor bag. He put it down on a small table and Lance went over to help. Bree and Hector were silent. They were still thinking about what Lance had said, and with fatigue setting in, they were not completely present in the moment. Eventually, Bree was able to muster a hello, and it was a pleasure to meet him too, with Hector following suit. This made Linus chuckle again, as he explained what he and Lance will need to do to assist in healing Bree, Hector, and Max's wounds. And that brings chapter 22 of this story to an end. I hope you have all been enjoying the series so far. With the crew now at Lance's house and having met Linus, they can now get some proper medical attention. as well as rest, especially now being on a full stomach. And what do you think of Lance and his questions? He loves getting to the core of people, joking that if he did not go into medicine, he would have gone into psychiatry. His words cut deep with our team, leaving everyone with something more to think on, especially Max. As he said, if he thinks like the Reapers, Godforsaken, or Daemon didn't exist, what kind of lives would they all lead? While they have all been moulded by the lives that they have lived, there's still parts of them that are core parts. While Max is not a violent person, he does like testing himself against strong opponents. Would he have kept this even if he was just a regular guy? Would Hector become a botanist, or would he have kept his love for nature if he didn't have the capacity to destroy it at any given time? Would Brie's grandmother still be alive? And what type of life would Brie have lived? Would any of them have met each other? Would Max have met Scarlet or Jezebel? All these questions have no definitive answers, but they make you wonder what life would have been like if things were different. Make sure to stay tuned for Regalion chapter 23, where we'll follow Zazel and see how things have fared for him. But until then, I hope you've all sufficiently warmed up, and that this story has brought you some level of comfort. I wish you safe travels on the journey of life, and feel free to come back again whenever you need a new story to warm your day.